Hey, welcome back to the A.C.E Football Academy. I am Coach Dunham, joined alongside Coach Hamilton. We are continuing our conversation of formations today. Previously, I gave my side of the story of my preferences, what I'm looking at in games, whatever it may be. Today, we're going to let Coach Hamilton give his side of the formations. Coach, we're kind of piggyback off what we did last week, and I want to get your point of view here of, formations that you feel work. I think we talked about the 4-4-2 last week. I gave my point of view of the pros and cons of the 4-4-2. We all know here lately, the last 5 to 10 years, the 4-3-3 has been kind of the new go-to formation. But for years, I think you and I growing up, the 4-4-2 was what everybody played. A flat back four, two strikers, and, it worked well. But what's your point of view on the 4-4-2? Do you like it, not like it? What did you find gave you some strengths and weaknesses when you played or even as you coach? What's your side of the story there?
I do not like it.
How do you really feel?
And interview done, right? Close, edit, interview done. I don't like it. It's not so much that I don't like it, but I do think that the game has evolved. So we mentioned this last week. The 4-4-2 is kind of where it all started, right? And so the game has evolved so much that the best teams are begging you to play a 4-4-2.
Oh, for sure.
Because they're going to just manipulate everything you do, and they're going to crush you, right? And so I'm not... In the current state of soccer, I'm not a fan of the 4-4-2 because I think there's so many ways to exploit it. And as a soccer coach, that's not what you want, right? You want to be able to defend, you want to be able to score. And I feel like in a 4-4-2, it's hard to do. In a true 4-4-2, it's hard to do both. You and I have talked that, now they're playing the 4-4-2 diamond. They're playing the diamond, the diamond 4-2 and things like. So there are lots of ways to spin that 4-4-2, and some of them work well, some of them can do. But I just think in that base 4-4-2 formation, there's so many ways around it that a good coach is going to figure out a way around it, right? A good coach with a good team is going to figure out a way around it. Now, all that being said, I will tell you that both of my teams are playing a 4-4-2 this season. And maybe against my wishes, but I do take their views into account, and this is what they were comfortable in, and start playing. And we haven't lost a game. We're doing really, really well.
It's working,
so
right?
It's working, right? So I do want to preface this whole conversation with that, but my current view on the 4-4-2 is that it was great when the game started, but the game has evolved so much that your typical 4-4-2 is going to be exploited by a good coach and a good team.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up to that. You said exploit quite a few times here. What have you noticed when you're playing the 4-4-2? What are other teams doing to you that you're like, oh my gosh, there's just no way around it?
Right? So, what a great question. I think you have to have wings that can play a true wing, right? You have to get up and back. And the second they get tired, you're done.
But you and I know, coaching youth soccer, that happens a lot.
Right? The second they decide that they're not going to get back, you're done. That is the biggest issue for me, right? That's the biggest issue is that, and again, this could be a whole nother podcast episode, but my girls don't believe me when I say, hey, if you're playing the wing and you can only make an up and down run 3 times, that is okay. Tell me, I'll get you out. I promise I'll get you back in the game. But they're so convinced that once I take them off the field that they're never going to go back in again ever in the history of soccer, that instead of working their butt off 3 times up and down the field, they're going to half work their butt off 6 times down the field, right?
Yeah.
And that's when that's where you run into trouble in a 4-4-2. That backside, right? And you have a good You have somebody strong on the right who can play across all the way to the left, and you just hope that that left wing for the other team doesn't get back.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest one. The other one is your center mids. Are you gonna play them? And this is great. People who aren't watching us on YouTube, this is a great visual. But my fingers are like right next to each other right now. So are you going to play them side by side? So you're playing a left center and a right center, or are you going to stack them and make that diamond, and so you ultimately have an attacking and a defense and a holding? But you and I both know that if you're going to run them side by side, and a team can run, a coach has taught a team to run diagonals, well, then you're done. And if you're going to stack them and run your attacking and holding, then a good team is going to place their best player in between them, and you're going to work off that. So I just think there's so many ways to beat the 4-4-2, and I know there's ways to beat every formation, but I've said this a lot, but with the way the game has evolved, I feel like out of all the formations that we have talked about, that we've mentioned, the 4-4-2 is the easiest to game plan against.
So I follow you 100% on how you can be exploited. And I was going to say the same thing. It's the outside channels.
Yeah.
So what have you found, since you're playing it on two teams, what is helping you? Like, is there certain areas that you're like, yeah, the 4-4-2, we are golden right here? What do you like about playing the 4-4-2?
I have, and I'll knock on wood, but I coach two 11v11 teams, a U13 and a U14 team, and on both of my teams, right now, I would put my back line up against anybody in the state of Kentucky's attack.
Yeah.
My back lines on both of those teams are so phenomenal that every now and then, it's okay that my wings don't get back. Every now and then, it's okay that we play the stack, we play the attacking and the holding center mids. It's okay that they get split. It's okay that they get stationary, because my back line is so good. And I think that's what makes the 4-4-2 good, right? You play that 4-4-2 when you know that the middle four, your midfield four, are going to be able to attack a little more, because then now I'm attacking with 6 versus 5 or versus 4, or however you want to spin it. But my back four to answer your question, my back four is because I have 2 of them, is the difference for me. I have 4 center backs. Unfortunately, one of them is injured, but I have 4 center backs that are top in their leagues at where they're playing right now.
So we've discussed this many times before, where your formation is really dependent on the talent that you have.
Right.
Just like you said, I've got these back line players or these center backs that I can put them on any team and they're going to be fantastic.
Right.
If you were to make some adjustments with the teams that you have, let's say, you're in the second half, it's 1-1, the other team's getting some push, and you're still in your 4-4-2. What are you adjusting in your formation? Are you keeping the 4-4-2 and just moving players around? Or are you moving the formation differently, like you said, playing the diamond?
Right.
Or are you completely changing your formation to something else? What do you revert to when that's not going your way?
So, it's funny you asked that. I have a little booklet that I have these scenarios written in, and I share them with my girls. My girls know, they know, hey, here's what's going to happen in these moments. I should also preface this with, and I'm sure I've said this before on this podcast, I am a firm believer that losing 1-0 and losing 3-0 doesn't matter. A loss is a loss. Right. Now, if I'm playing in a tournament, if I'm playing in a situation where goal differential matters, then okay, then we have to talk about that, right?
Right.
But in your typical regular season, normal soccer matchup, I am a firm believer in that 1-0, 3-0, there's no difference. So
Okay.
I in that situation of 1-0, I'm always gonna try and go and get the equalizer. Always. And I've done that, and I've seen it work in my favor. I've seen it go badly as well, you know.
Yeah.
But to your question of 1-1, and I feel like this is a cop out answer, but it's the truth. So it depends on the game situation, right?
Oh, of course.
Am I playing that my 4-4-2 and it's 1-1 and I am pounding their goal, right? Then I'm gonna ride it out and hope we can find the back of the net. Am I playing that 4-4-2, but I have been playing defensively all night long, right? So if that's the case where I feel like they're gonna score any minute, right? And we as coaches we all have those moments where we feel like, okay, we're gonna score. It's coming. We also have those
Right.
moments where we're like, okay, we're getting ready to get scored off. It's coming, right? And in those moments, in the moments where I feel like it's 1-1, and if I have to win, if a draw helps me, or I feel like or if I feel like, I guess goal differential wise, a draw is beneficial to me, then I probably switch to your 4-2-3-1.
Okay.
Right, and I drop. Ultimately, all I do is I bring one of my center mids to a holding mid, and I drop one of my strikers to a center mid. So it's a real quick switch for my girls. They know it, and so that's what I would do in those moments. But in a moment when I'm losing, and I know you're going to ask me this question in a minute, but in a moment where I'm losing 1-0 and there's 10 minutes left, I switch to my favorite formation. And I don't know why my girls don't like it and it's not that they don't like it, coach. They almost refuse to play it.
Okay.
But I finally convinced my middle school team this past fall to convert to it. And they bought in. We worked hard on it for a couple of days, a couple of trainings, and they bought in, and it changed everything about us. We went from winning matches 1-0 or drawing matches 0-0 again because, as I mentioned, you're not going to score on me, and knock on wood, but you're not going to score on me.
Yeah.
And so, where's my problem? My problem is offensively. And it was such a problem to the point to where my goalkeeper came to me and said, Coach, I'm doing a great job. Our back line is doing a great job. You have to get us some wins.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we can't keep drawing 0-0. We can't keep,
right.
You have to get us some wins. And first of all, kudos to her for being able to come to your head coach and say that. Say, hey, look, we're doing everything we can and we aren't producing on the other end, right? But I moved to a 3-2-3-2.
Okay.
I never played it before, but I had done my research, I had looked it up, and so now, I talk about the movement of my players. Ultimately, what I did from that 4-4-2 is I took one of my center backs and moved her to the second holding mid. Right? So there's your 3-2.
Yeah.
And then I took one of my center mids and moved her to a striker. And there's your 3-2. And what I saw develop, the runs, the overloads, the switching of play that I saw just from film, that not necessarily that my girls were doing, but the potential that was there, makes me so excited about that formation that it has quickly become my favorite to play.
Yeah, and that's awesome to hear because I think a lot of kids see three in the back and think, oh, we're going to get scored on, coach.
Right.
They see that missing defender that they're so comfortable with. It brings security to them. You just said,
Yeah.
Our back line's unbelievable. You're not going to score on us. So when they hear you're taking away a defender, that doesn't sound right, coach.
Right.
So, but what they're not seeing is we're going from conservative to we're pressing.
Yeah.
We're pushing people up. We now have numbers against their defenders who are typically have a little bit more free time.
Right.
And I think once they start playing it more often, they start seeing, oh, we're getting turnovers now.
Yep.
And now we're getting some quick counterattacks, or we're winning the ball in the midfield, or we're getting it straight to our strikers. So,
and even so, it's so funny you bring that up. I ran a little mock scrimmage tonight with my 2011. So we scrimmaged the 2010. So we're a little out of our league in that matchup.
Sure.
But what I noticed was almost immediately in our 4-4-2. So we get kickoff, right? So we have the kickoff in our 4-4-2. We play the drop off the kickoff. And one of my center mids actually plays a good ball back to the striker. Mm-hmm. And she plays a good ball over to the other striker. And so now you're at the top of their attacking third, but I just have my two strikers. And your midfield is kind of hanging back, watching like, oh, go score, strikers. And the way I introduce the 3-2-3-2 is, okay, here's what we're doing. And maybe, again, I'm sure there are coaches listening to this that are going to roll over and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you do that. But the way I introduce the 3-2-3-2 is you five are now going to attack and you five are now going to defend. Right? That's how I introduce it.
Right.
And then as they get used to that scenario, I talk about, okay, are there moments when the two wing midfielders still have to drop all the way back? Yes, of course there are. There are when they're really pressing, corners, free kicks, then yes, you're going to have to drop some, right? But the ultimate goal of the 3-2-3-2 is exactly what you said. As soon as we create a turnover, I should be able to play a ball wide and then be able to go.
Yeah.
Right? Because it does what did we mention the hardest thing for the 4-4-2 is? It's the two wing players, right?
Right.
That 3-2-3-2 in theory takes a lot of pressure off of those wings.
1,000%. 1,000%. So, so let's move on to another topic here where if you're in a perfect world, and like I said before, everything we do is dependent on the type of players that we have. But let's say you're the coach of Arsenal and you can buy whatever players you need on the formation that you like. If you're the pro coach for Arsenal, what formation is your go-to saying, this is my thing, I know how to work this, maybe with a few modifications here and there, but you can buy, forget about what players are there. You've got the players that you want. What formation do you think you would be a champion with?
I think I would run a 3-4-3.
Very attacking?
Yeah.
Okay.
For a long time, I was on the same side with you. You mentioned that I'm going to start with my defense, and then I'm going to go from there. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that in your conversation, and for a long time, that's how I felt too. But to the point of your question, if you're going to give me what I want to do, I only need 3 defenders. Right? I'm going to be able to defend with 3 defenders and 4 midfielders who are truly going to get back and help.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the dream scenario, right? You're going to have 4 midfielders that actually play offense and defense and not just offense and sometimes defense. So, and then coaching-wise, defending-wise, attacking, run-wise, build up, all those sorts of things. That's where I feel like I am the most confident is in that 3-4-3.
And I think the great thing about the 4-3-3, the 3-4-3, is when you got those 3 forwards, the high press
Yeah.
That has changed the
Yes.
modern game of soccer dramatically. Like, that was never a thing
Right.
when you and I
It was
played
not.
years ago.
Because we all played the 4-4-2.
We all played the 4-4-2, and your outside backs had plenty of time. Your center backs, they would
Right.
drop back, they would have plenty of space. But now that we're pressing those defenders, and if they're not good with the ball at their feet, you're winning that ball all day long.
Well, and I think and I'm sure you say the same thing with your boys, but this is what I tell my girls, like, hey, when we're in this formation, it's like the 3-4-3 or I know you have played some 2-4-2, some things like that. So, when you're in those formations where on paper your back line is outnumbered, right? So on paper you're outnumbered on the back line. The press becomes so important, and what makes those situations dangerous when you play those four types of formation is it just takes one player to not press, and then your whole thing's in trouble, right? So, I do a lot of preaching with who are we reading? Who decides if we're going to press or if we're holding back? And they're always just like the center striker. Right. If they play a ball in and you see a striker go, that means everybody goes.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think, I love the 3-4-3. It is, again, if you give me my ideal lineup, that's what I'm going to play. But in those scenarios, it also is very high risk, high reward.
Oh, for sure.
That, because it just takes your center mid being lazy and not stepping, that they go inside outside, and now we're in trouble, right? Now they're counter. Now all of a sudden our high press becomes a counter for them.
Oh yeah.
So it can become dangerous, but if you're gonna give me my ideal lineup, that the 3-4-3 is where I'm going.
Well, me as a coach, I hear 3-4-3, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even fathom doing that.
Right.
However, you and I'm currently coaching a team that plays 9v9, and your teams were 9v9. And you had told me that you play a 2-4-2. I'm thinking, that sounds insanity. And then in the fall and in the spring of this past year, I took my 2013 boys and I said, we're going to play a 2-4-2. I had a lot of attacking players, and I thought, you know what? Let's just go for it.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind how much control we had in the midfield.
Yeah. You just turn them over. You just turn over.
Now, the problem was we would turn the ball right back over.
Correct.
Because they would try to dribble through everybody. But the concept works when you have an overload of numbers in a certain area of the field, where the two defenders, they would just wait for our team to lose the ball, and that one attacker to get that one bad touch, boom, we got it right back.
Right.
And so I thought, man, we could really make some business of this.
Well, and to your point there, when you're pressing that high, what does the other team start doing? They start playing the long balls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have those 2 or 3 backline players who you trust to get control and then find feet, then okay, now we're golden, right? If they're gonna control the ball and then just kick it as hard as they can back down the field, then okay, then we get to a kickball matchup and now we're in trouble, right?
Right.
But if you have those backline players, especially your center back, that you trust to, when the defense finally does play that long ball, they're going to control and then find feet back. That's when those whole attacking formations become so much more dangerous, because now the other team's not even attempting to get forward because they know you're coming, right?
Right.
So now you don't have to worry about the counter, because nobody's countering. Everybody knows, okay, this ball's coming right back.
Let's change wheels here a little bit.
Okay.
Let's look 10, 15 years down the road.
Oh, okay.
Do you see more new formations happening down the road? I mean, we've gone through
Right.
I feel like there's so many different sequences of formations you can do these days where if you got the players, you could probably make it work.
Right.
Do you see the game of soccer changing a lot in the next 15 to 20 years? Or do you still feel it's kind of going to be the same what we're dealing with right now?
I think it's going to be the same. I think the changes, I mean, there's only so many different ways you can position people on the field, right? I mean,
You would think.
right?
But again,
I mean, but you think about the 4-4-2 and we talk about the variations.
let me ask
A
you
big
this.
one is a 3-5-2. Think about all the variations come with that 3-5-2 nowadays.
Do you feel that the sweeper could ever come back into play again? Like have a 1, 2,
yeah.
blank, 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 have these massive layers in your lineup. Do you see that ever happening? Or do you feel like the flat back is just here and it's never going to change?
That's what a question.
Because, and let me bring this up to you. So, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a team in the English Premier League that got promoted, and I can't remember which team it was, and I apologize, but there was a head coach, he just messed things up. He had a rotating center back. The ball would be on the far right corner, and his center back, he would swing out to the wing. And it messed people up.
Okay.
Until they finally started saying, oh, gosh, man, we got to watch out for that. And they eventually get relegated again. But it's things like that make me think, what other brainiac coach is going to come along with some mastermind idea that's going to revolutionize soccer again?
So I guess my answer would be like, is there going to be something new? I would say no. But is there going to be something like that comes back around?
Right.
Then probably, I mean, it's just like
Right.
fashion and everything else in our world, right? Everything kind of comes back around. For example, I don't want to give names, but in our middle school tournament, we hosted it, or we played a team in the first round who we had beaten once, they had beaten us once.
Mm-hmm.
And funnily enough, neither game was very close. We had handled them in the first game, they handled us in the second game, and so we did a lot of work leading up to it, and we were really good that night. We jumped out to a 2-0 lead, and I felt really confident. And then at halftime, I looked at one of my holding mids. So we were playing our 3-2-3-2.
Mm-hmm.
Looked at one of my holding mids, and I said, hey, you're going to man mark 19.
Right.
And she was like, okay. Well, I later found out she had no idea what that meant. So I think
hilarious.
I think those are the type of things that might start coming back into play. Like, hey, we're gonna take this 11v11 match and we're gonna make it 10-on-10 because Hamilton's gonna mark Dunham and we're gonna take you both out of the game.
Yeah.
Because we lose something with Hamilton. But if we can take Dunham away, then they really struggle. So I think those are the type of things. So maybe not a formation type swing, but I think those type of strategical plays are going to come into it because, I looked at an 8th grader and said, hey, you're going to man mark 19. She's like, got it, love it. And then after the game, she's like, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I don't know that there's going to be a massive change in the way the game is played, but I think there's going to be some tweaks to the way. Could sweeper come back? Of course it could.
Right.
It's going to take a coach brave enough to do it.
Yeah. I would love to do a sweeper.
It depends on what you're doing and where you're keeping that sweeper. But I look forward to what things are going to be in the next 15 years. There will definitely be some changes going on. I mean, look, Johan Cruyff brought in the possession game, and look at where we're at now. And that was, 40 years ago when that went down. So is the possession game going to be as big as it is now? Who knows? Coach, great conversation today. I love getting insights from different coaches, different perspectives. You and I have had numerous conversations where we see things a little bit differently, but it makes the game so enticing.
I'd love to have somebody on. Somebody come argue with us.
Coach Hamilton, I'm Coach Dunham. We are the Ace Football Academy. Go kick some ace.